Actually, how about this? Let's talk about the source, where yoga has come from. So everyone knows yoga comes from India? Cool. Okay. Alright. So yoga comes from something called Sanatana Dharma. And the colloquial name for Sanatana Dharma is Hinduism. So Sanatan means eternal. Dharma means, who knows what Dharma means? Everybody's heard this word, religion. Right? Huh?
Religion.
It's often been translated as religion, but it's definitely going to go beyond that. Dharma is a Sanskrit word that doesn't have a direct translation. That's why I'm going to discuss it, and then you'll have an idea. Super important to need. So you can put this under your essential yogic terms to know. First one is Dharma. It's often translated as religion, but it goes way beyond that. I wouldn't even really call it that accurate. But it's very much translated. Anyone else?
Is it purpose or calling?
Duty. Right? Purpose or calling. Yes. Teachers can speak up as well. Anyone else?
I was going to say rules, but not strict rules. It's kind of rules/guidance of life.
You know what? This is the perfect definition. Not rules, but this is actually, if you're going to really summarize it, that which ought to be done. So let's make this clear. Let's talk about something. There's this basic theory going around Earth right now that anything goes, right? Things are whatever I call it. Meaning there's no shoulds. According to yoga philosophy, you're born with shoulds, right? And not to get religious, but for example, you shouldn't steal, right? You shouldn't lie, generally speaking, right? And so Dharma is that, right? That which ought to be done. Well said. Anyone else want to throw something out there? Don't be afraid. You know how you get good at something, do it. Even if in the beginning you do it badly. So if you don't know exactly what Dharma is and you have an idea, don't be afraid to get it 30% right. That didn't encourage anyone to be bold. Like no one stepped forward at all. Mimi, what's Dharma?
I like to think of it as service.
Okay. I'll put that over that which ought to be done. Because, yes, that's part of the service. So Dharma actually comes from, I forgot the root of it, but the word itself means that which upholds. I forgot the root word of it, but that's actual definition. That which upholds, and what is being upheld? The moral structure of the universe. So it means that which upholds the moral structure of the universe, that which allows for the harmonious evolution of all things toward light. That is Dharma. And that is why it is that which ought to be done, that which is ought to be done, and that is why it is duty. So everyone follow that? Dharma is that which upholds the moral order of the universe, and so it is those things which ought to be done, and universal duty and then personal duty. Personal duty is called swadharma. So swa is self, right? Remember swadhyaya, self-observation. Swadharma is your own duty. What sada ought to do, right? Whereas universal dharma is what everyone should do. So that's what dharma means. So sometimes it's translated as religion, morality, righteousness, duty. That's the definition of dharma. So Sanatan means eternal dharma. I should have asked before I erased that side. So that means the eternal dharma. So Indians have named their religion the eternal dharma. That which ought to be done. Why do they name it that? Because these things are not going to change. They're saying that we're going to describe nature, and this is nature which goes far beyond human existence. So that's Hinduism. So Hinduism has 6 main schools. These are called 6 darshanas. That means philosophical schools. By the way, Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma is the oldest surviving, continuously practiced spiritual system on earth. Meaning it's been practiced recordedly for 5,000 years, but before, and that's as long as human records have been so-called recorded or accurate. But it's been reported continuously according to themselves. But what I'm saying is there's no spiritual system that is as old that's still being regularly practiced today. It has been continuously practiced since then. Right? And so it's the oldest surviving, continuously practiced religion or spiritual system. Sanskrit, the language in which its original books are written, are the oldest, is the oldest surviving language still in widespread use. And the Vedas, I shouldn't have skipped this. I should have put, actually here, let me put the Vedas and then put the Darshanas. And the Vedas, somebody asked, was it last night that people asked about the Vedas? Yeah? So Vedas. There are 4 Vedas and then there's 6 schools. Killing it. Butchering, man. 6 darshanas. Okay, so the Vedas, Veda means knowledge, which I love. It comes from the Sanskrit word vid, V-I-D. It means to know. Vedas simply mean knowledge, so this is how bold these books are. They're like, well, these are books of knowledge. There are 4 Vedas, originally. Older surviving scriptures, still in widespread use. So this is how profound yoga is. Yoga comes from the oldest surviving language, oldest surviving scriptures, oldest surviving spiritual system, still in widespread use. Vedas means knowledge. There's 4 sections of the Vedas. We won't get too much into this. But the last sections are called the Upanishads. So these are the scriptures. These are the philosophical portions of the Vedas. Called the cream of the Vedas. Meaning this is where the knowledge is. So the Upanishads are scriptures that are parts of the original Vedas. It's a philosophical part of it. So the reason I'm saying this is because all of these systems, the 6 darshanas, have come out of the Vedas. Now we won't talk too much about what the 6 darshanas is. Maybe I can mention them actually, just so that we have it on record. If I have it here. Here we do. So that one is called Nyaya, founded by Gautama Rishi. It's basically a school of logical thinking by Sheshika, by Kanada Rishi. Sankhya by Kapila Muni. So these are philosophical ways of analyzing the world. So all this is spirituality, right? So all of this is going back to the source, how to return to source. The other one is called Purva Mimamsa, founded by Jaimini Rishi. And then that's based on what's called Karma Kanda, which is acting for God. And then Uttamimamsa or Vedanta, which is studying the Vedanta. So those are 5. The 6th one, right, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's called Yoga. This school was founded by Patanjali Rishi. So yoga is one of the 6 darshanas of Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism. Everyone got that? So is everyone seeing the branch now? Boom. Yeah, we good? And it was this particular yoga system, especially Ashtanga yoga. Actually, Ashtanga yoga, how about this? So I'm going to give a little history now. Prior to really around the 1st century of the Common Era. So there's, hold on, let me just say. So there's 4 main paths of yoga. 1, 2, 3, 4. One path is called, let's call it Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and then Astanga Yoga. Roger. Like for example, I think Allison?
Ashley?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Don't be mad at me. Ashley, did you say you liked Astanga Yoga, or did you say you liked Astanga Yoga? Yes. Okay, so I want to correct something. I want to actually correct Pattabhi Jois. So Pattabhi Jois started what's called Vinyasa. He called his system Astanga Vinyasa. I wish he hadn't done that. Because Vinyasa means flowing, right? So actually where that came from was an asana practice, and there was these old texts found, and they wanted to develop a more vigorous asana practice for soldiers. And so it was this flowing style that was more athletic, right? Which actually was not how asanas really originally developed. Originally asana means steady pose. And originally asanas were meant to be held a much longer time, and there's thousands, I think technically there's 1,008 asana postures. So you're supposed to practice the diversity of them, and originally you were meant to hold the poses. Of course, different teachers are going to come along, and they're going to be like, hey, this works for this, or this works for that, right? For example, Bikram, who fell from grace and should have, but he devised a system that works physically, right? Heat up the room, do these 26 postures, they work physically. Vinyasa Yoga also was started this way. However, he called it Astanga. Astanga is actually one of the 4 main paths of yoga, which is has a totally different meaning. And so he's confused people by calling his system Astanga Vinyasa, and I'm not sure why he did it. Maybe because he was trying to connect it to this broader system that we're going to take away. And it's connected, actually, because it's asana practice. And I'm sure maybe he was also teaching philosophy as well, so maybe that's why he calls his system Astanga Vinyasa. But the problem is, as things spread west, right, and all of these other things weren't teaching, Astanga Yoga wasn't being taught, Vinyasa was being taught. Vinyasa with Astanga, or I think that Vinyasa was Astanga, whereas Astanga is something much broader and bigger. Did everyone follow that? Everyone get what I said? No? Okay, I'm going to say it again. Typically, and I think a lot of people are learning this, typically people think, oh, I'm going to go to an Astanga class, right? Which is a form of an asana class. Everyone knows what I mean by asana class, the physical postures. Okay, so asanas are the physical postures. So a lot of times people will think they're going to an Astanga class. They think that the Astanga class, and sometimes it's called that, right? The asana class is called Astanga, so they think this form of asana, or this form of physical practice, is Astanga Yoga. There's actually, there are 8 limbs to Astanga Yoga. Asanas are one of them, and what he's practicing is Vinyasa Asana. Everyone get that? He's practicing a flowing, athletic type of physical postures. And that's a form of step 3 of Astanga, which has 8 steps. So it goes back to what I was saying originally. By calling this Vinyasa practice Astanga, people will get confused and not know what Astanga is. Whereas Astanga is much more profound. Everyone follow that? Mm-hmm. Cool, okay. So, we got 4 paths of yoga. Everyone get this? So, it's not Dharma Hinduism gives birth to the Vedas. Vedas, there's 6 schools. Yoga is just one of those 6 schools, and then there's 4 main paths. Cool. Should we talk about the 4 main paths? All right. Any questions, comments before I roll on? People go quiet on me, and I used to be like, nobody's interested, but then I've learned, like, you guys are digesting. Is this what's happening? Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to erase this. So then we'll talk about the 4 paths of yoga. It's intense. I'm going to actually do this over. I'm going to start with, so I put Astanga here. Ashtanga is also called Raja. Raja means royal or king. So it's called the royal path of yoga. Actually, I think you guys are going to love this stuff. I do, obviously. And this is what we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks. So 4 main paths. Ashtanga. Asht means 8. Anga means limbs. I like the note taking. This is how you remember and learn. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is how I remember. People were like, how can you remember this? Because I write it down and I study. Right? So I'm glad you guys have done it. 8-limbed yoga. The first one, Yamas. Number 2, Niyama. Does anyone know any of these? Okay. Just checking. Asana. Actually, Mimi knows them. Mimi, you want to shout them out? Just to get some interaction.
Pranayama.
Perfect. Number 4 is pranayama.
Pratyahara.
Pratyahara.
Dharana.
Say again.
Dharana.
Dharana or dharan.
Dhyana.
Dhyana.
Samadhi.
Yes. Wow. She's teaching for a reason. Do you know what those mean?
Yes. Yamas are a moral code.
Yeah.
How you interact with others.
Uh-huh.
And the niyamas are the self-discipline. Your relation to yourself. Asana is postures.
Asana means steady pose. That's the definition of what it means. Go on.
Pranayama is breath regulation or breath practices.
It is. But what does actually, how about we,
Prana is
Get-
energy.
yes. What kind of energy? Is it fossil fuels?
Vital essence.
Huh? Bioessence?
Your vital essence.
Yes, vital energy. So prana is your vital energy. It's the same as chi in the Chinese system, right? Yama, actually, I'm pretty sure it's going to come from the same Sanskrit word as yoga, which means to control. Actually, it's going to be related. So it basically means to yoke or bring under control the vital energy. So control of the vital energy through control of the breath. So it's good. The reason I like to go into definitions, pranayama, breathing practices to gain control of the breath. And there's a science to all of this. But the reason we're breathing is because we're going to control the life force, the vital energy of the life force, right? Perfect.
Pratyahara, sense withdrawal.
Withdrawal, yes. That means what we did before, withdrawal of the consciousness from both external and internal phenomena.
Dharana, concentration.
Yes, concentration, focus. Dhyan.
Meditation.
Wow. Samadhi.
Samadhi, bliss, the highest state.
Samadhi actually means oneness. Yes, which one comes from this? Sama means sameness. D means consciousness. So it means same consciousness, means that's when your consciousness becomes the same as God's through merger. So what I want you to look at is, you see how this is a scientific process leading you to union with God. Can everyone see that? No? Yes? Kind of. A little bit? Because I said it? Maybe. Okay. Alright, next we're going to talk about is Bhakti Yoga. I'm just going to write these on the board. And then I'm going to give you a definition of yoga from the scriptures. For 1 second. Okay, so Bhakti. Brianna, do you know what Bhakti is?
I don't.
It means the yoga of devotion. So, remember I said this means 8 limbs? Or royal or kingly. Bhakti means devotion, love, and service. But truly it means the translation is devotions. So Bhakti is the yoga of devotion. In Bhakti Yoga there are 9 basic practices. Of course it's not limited to these things, but this is good. The first one's called Shravanam. Shravanam Kirtanam. Smaranam. Parasevanam. Archanam, Bandhanam, Darshan, Sakyam, and Atmanivedanam. Okay. So, Shravanam means hearing. Kirtana means chanting, but also means speaking, but, speaking forcefully. Smaranam means remembering. Padasevana means serving. Hey, I'm going to write them, then I'll move out the way. You can actually read. 1 second. Archana means worshiping. Vandanam, I love this. Prayer. Servants. Friend. Total self. Okay. Actually, here's what I'm actually going to do. I'm going to hold you in suspense before I go into this. Because now I think is a good time for a definition of yoga. And what I'm going to do is I'm planning to leave that all on the board. So I'm going to actually do this for Gyan Yoga. I'm going to write a definition so you can have it all in one place. But yoga. Yoga comes from the Sanskrit word yuj. It means to yoke together or to join. To unite. For those for whom English is not your first language, a yoke, remember in every country in the old days, there were 2 bulls, right? They had to plow the fields. They would put a yoke on them. The yoke is the thing that keeps the bulls together. So it's that big wooden thing that keeps the bulls together. So that's a yoke. So the Sanskrit word yuj means to yoke together, unity. And the term yoga comes from the root yuj, means to yoke together, means to bind together, to unite.
And in English, you also use it for jeans. The back part is called a yoke. That seams together the top part of your pants to the bottom part.
Wow.
It's a yoke.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, interesting.
Interesting. Wow. Learn something new every day. Okay. So, here's what I want to stress to you, what I want to share with you, is I said earlier, how many people have heard that this union refers to union of mind, body, spirit? I think most people have heard that, right? Okay, I'm going to ask you, are the people who heard that, how many of you actually investigated and tested what you heard? This is a tough one, right? Sorry to put you on the spot. This is how I learned too. Here's what I want to ask you from now on. The problem is it doesn't mean that, even though it's a widespread misconception. If we hear something without, especially if it's important enough, if we hear something, investigate it. The average person doesn't. And so the world is filled with misinformation. And it's not because everybody's poorly intentioned. It's because the majority of us, we hear something and we pass it along. Right? Everyone knows the Chinese whispers things, right? And so most of us are passing along this false information that yoga means union of mind, body, and spirit. And it sounds good and it feels good, right? Here's the trouble with it. Yoga actually refers to the union of soul with God. Samadhi, same consciousness, is referring to your individual soul uniting with the soul of the divine, the spirit. Because actually the nature of the soul is consciousness. And the truth is, for yoga, for this union to occur, you actually transcend the mind and body. Does that make sense? Because you and God are beyond your own mind and body. And what I'm going to do is read to you now some scriptures, because I'm not making this up, that'll show that. And so what I want to encourage you to do is whatever you learn from now on, investigate it, check it out, see if it's true. Right? It's and all of us have been there. All of us, and in fact, we're still there. I'm still there. All of us have heard something and just thought it was true. Right? And especially once it gets settled into the lexicon, right? I mean, lexicon means popular speech. Then we go along with that. The problem is the actual means of uniting your soul with God gets lost if we think it's just about experiencing happiness in the physical form with mind and body. Now, while you're engaged in your yoga practices, you do want to unite your consciousness with your body and with your mind. But the purpose of that is to bring them under control so that you can do with them exactly what you want. And what a yogi wants to do, or a yogini wants to do, is unite her soul with God. And then the real truth is, ultimately, the body and mind are usually obstacles. Until you have them under control, then they become tools. Does that make sense? So here, let's read from some scripture about the power of yoga and what yoga actually is. So, Patanjali says, so the reason also I like this book is because the whole Yoga Sutras are in it. So there's scriptures written by Patanjali called the Raja Yoga Sutras. We were talking about last night. Sutras means thread, so it actually means scriptures, so threads of wisdom. He wrote a book called the Yoga Sutras. It's really popular. I think you guys in the course are going to be learning about it. And so in it he writes, so in chapter 4, Sutra 34, the final verse of Raja Yoga Sutras, Patanjali says, the soul is established in its true nature, which is pure consciousness. When it does this, it says, Samadhi Siddhir Iswana Pranidhanat. So Samadhi, this oneness, is accomplished through surrender to God. Samadhi Siddhir. Siddhir means accomplishment, attainment. Actually, the term siddhi means a power. Siddhir, Iswara Pranidhana. Iswara Pranidhana is actually the fifth niyama. So remember I said originally I was going to teach about the foundations of yoga. So if you guys come on Friday, this is what we're actually going to start with, this. The last of those is called Iswara Pranidhana, which means literally surrender to God. And Sanskrit language is very precise. The term Ishvara refers to God in a personal form, actually. Pranidhana means to surrender yourself. And it says that you attain yoga through this surrender. let me continue. It says this, Krishna says this also. So in the Bhagavad Gita means the song of God. And maybe, I'll try to get to it today, but maybe next class I'll talk about some of the basic scriptures that I like to study. Bhagavad Gita is a super popular book. It's part of a larger book called the Mahabharata, or the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is the great epic of India. Maha means great, Bharata means India. The Bhagavad Gita, the song of God, is God himself speaking to his disciple Arjuna. And so he speaks about yoga. This is what's fascinating about this, actually, once you study it, is Krishna talks in depth about Bhakti, Jnana, and Karma Yoga. I have something to tell you. Originally, in yogic scriptures, in yoga practice, asanas barely make an appearance. They really don't make much of an appearance. I don't really hear about them. I mean, they existed, of course, but in terms of prominence, it really starts with the Ashtanga yoga in the 1st century, meaning that yoga was being practiced for a long time, and it was strictly understood to be what I'm going to read to you now, which is controlling your mind to unite with God. Patanjali includes asanas in his system in the 1st century. Asanas do not gain any prominence still in yoga practice until I think it's around the 16th century. And I'll write it down for you just so you know. There's a book called, and I'm going to erase this later, the Hatha Yoga Pradipaka. And I'm pretty sure it's around the 16th century or so, written by someone, his name is Yogi Swatmaram. And he's the one. So Hatha Yoga, right? Hatha, Ha, and Ta is sun and moon. So Hatha Yoga is the yoga of balancing the male and female energies within the body. Now they consist primarily of asanas, pranayama, kriya. Here, I'll write this down actually. So Hatha Yoga consists of asanas, pranayama, kriyas, mudras, yantras, and maybe mantras, I'm not sure. Asanas are the physical practices. Pranayama, breathing exercises. Kriya, cleansing practices. Mudras are hand symbols, or things that we do with our hands to channel energy. Yantras are spiritual pictures and geographic symbols in which we meditate that channel divine energy. So this Hatha Yoga Pradipaka normally talks about how to practice these things to bring the male-female energies under control within the system. So this is when actually asanas really comes onto the scene with more force. It wasn't until 500 years ago, whereas yoga had been talked about and practiced for thousands of years before that. Did you have a question, Mimi?
I think bandhas are also discussed in
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, we put that down. Bandhas. There's probably more too. I'm not sure if they talk about mantras. Do they talk about mantras in there?
Yeah, they do.
Do they talk about mantras? Do they have mantras in Hatha Yoga? I'm not sure. Yeah. Actually, honestly, sometimes I include bandhas as part of the pranayama practice because they often are actually joined with pranayama. So that's why I didn't write them independently. Bandhas are bodily locks that you put in when you're trying to control your energy. Usually they accompany pranayama practice. So what I want to read to you just a little bit is from also the Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita talks about these other paths of yoga for thousands of years before Hatha Yoga comes on the scene. And this is what Krishna says. He says, so Krishna is referring to himself as God. He says, amongst all the yogis, the one whose whole self abides in me, and who is with full and unflinching faith worships me, is the greatest and most intimately united with me. That is my opinion. In the Bhagavad Purana, Krishna says, completely control your mind by fixing it on me. This is the essence of the science of yoga. he further says, I am personally the ultimate shelter and way of life for all righteous persons. And if one has no devotion for me, then for all practical purposes, one has no effective means for escaping the material existence. He'll go on. Bhagavad Purana, he says, the supreme gain in life is devotion to me. And so he'll continue along these lines. He says, through purified intelligence, give up all your actions to me, take sole refuge in me. Using this yoga of wisdom, absorb your consciousness in me at all times. And this is one of my favorite verses. I call it one of my seed verses. So this is from the book, the Bhagavad Purana. He says, in the eyes of the wise, the teachings of the Vedas, the path of Astanga Yoga, the Sankhya system of philosophy, renunciation, suffering hardships for the sake of one's faith, controlling the senses, truthfulness, all have their goal in mind control, even as rivers terminate in the ocean. So now we're getting into it a little further. So how about this? This is the actual definition of yoga. It is union of the soul with God through neutralizing the activities of the mind. Can I just say that without writing it down for everyone to get that? The actual definition of yoga is union of the soul with God through neutralizing the activities of the mind. So it actually goes beyond just controlling. It means you need to bring the mind to stillness. Again, in Bhagavad Gita says, once the mind is stilled, the self within is already reached. For such a person, happiness and distress, honor and dishonor, heat and cold are all the same. Then I'll read one more of my seed verses from Bhagavad Gita I love this one. I try to live by this one. And then also, the reason I'm also doing this is because, how about this? Like, the Bible says everything that claims to come from spirit should be tested, right? And so I should be tested if I'm telling you that this is what yoga is. How do you know? Just because I'm saying it. The reason I'm saying it is because I have multiple scriptures from different paths saying the same exact thing. Actually, there's dozens of Vedic scriptures, yoga scriptures. They're very consistent. They say the same thing. Yoga is union of the soul with God through neutralizing the mind. It's all about neutralizing the mind. And this is a great verse. Bhagavad Gita 6:20 through 23. When through the yoga practice of restraining the mind, all mental activities cease, and then peace is attained. And one becomes completely satisfied in the self alone. In this state, one experiences the supreme happiness. Established thus, one never again departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, she thinks that there is no greater gain. Being thus situated, one is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest sorrow. Know that this freedom from sorrow through union with the Supreme is called yoga. This union through yoga is the actual freedom from all suffering. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to briefly go over that again. I'm going to write down the paths of Gyan Yoga, and we're going to wrap up. Does that sound good? Is that okay? Cool. I want to briefly just remember it says, so he's telling you what yoga is, through the yoga practice of restraining the mind, controlling the mind. That's what yoga is. So if you really want to simplify what yoga is, it's union with God through controlling the mind. He says the fruit of that is peace. And the fruit of this peace is the supreme happiness. And how many people have ever experienced that? Right? I have a saying, peace is better than pleasure. Because that happiness that comes from peace is sublime. The reason is the nature of the true self is bliss. The truth is you're always at peace. Your mind isn't. Your body isn't. And you're identifying with your mind and body, not your true eternal self. When the mind is stilled, you've connected with your true self and you obtain peace. And that peace allows for the bliss of the self to come forward, and it's described as a supreme happiness. Whereas if your happiness is dependent upon pleasure, the nature of the world is that displeasure automatically alternates with pleasure. You can't escape it. And so what the yogis say is seek the self. That's what Krishna says. And then he says, once you are established within the self, you never again depart from the truth. And upon attaining this, you feel that there's nothing greater to gain. I have practically experienced this. I've sought myself over the last decade and a half, and then I watched what I used to do and watched what other people do when they seek happiness from family, from friends, from material achievements, material accomplishments. They come and go. I've seen it. I've gotten a steadiness that I don't know other people have because I've sought this. It can't go anywhere. It's brought me some... I'm literally able to be the source of my own happiness. Now, I don't have it perfectly down and I'm still working on it. But Sadh's seen this. Like, I regenerate from some stuff really quickly, and it's through contact with the self. The inner self. And for me, I've seen it. I agree with Krishna. Once you have it, you will feel that there's nothing greater to gain. And then being thus situated, you are never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest sorrow. Know that this freedom from sorrow through union with the Supreme is called yoga. This union through yoga is the actual freedom from all suffering. So now we know what yoga is. I'm going to write this on the board and we'll briefly talk about what they are. So, Jnana Yoga is called Jnana Yoga practices. Again, there's something called Viveka. Vairagya. Oh, that's so big. Shat Sampat. Wow. And then Mimukshava. Boom. Okay, so Viveka means discrimination. Vairagya means detachment. Shat Sampat means the 6 virtues, and I'll talk about what those are really quickly. And then Mumukshava means a burning desire for liberation. Okay, so this is a summary of yoga. Now you have it. You want to know what yoga is. It's all there. So Ashtanga Yoga, this path, 8 limbs. First you practice moral codes and self-discipline. Before practicing moral codes and self-disciplines, you don't advance to asanas traditionally. Traditionally, you learn all this in the school of a guru. And the guru had you carrying water and fetching firewood and practicing these. Next week, actually, we're going to start Friday. We'll start with what these are. These are the foundations. How about this? I remember I had somebody in class and I was talking about the Yamas and Niyamas. And I asked, hey, who knows what the Yamas and Niyamas are? And she said, one person, God bless her, she said, yeah, you know, they're kind of codes, and it's not like rules you need to live by to be a good yogi, but, you know, they're kind of guidelines. And I was like, no. Sorry. No, you have to practice yamas and niyamas or you can't practice yoga. Meaning you have to practice moral codes of conduct and self-discipline because you cannot be a yogi without it. And so we don't really go into rules. If you talk to deities, they're not judgmental. They don't even deal in good or bad. They deal in cause and effect. So we're not talking about just to be good. We're talking about if you have a goal of returning to your true self, you have to start here with moral codes of conduct and self-discipline. Then asanas, physical postures. Hatha Yoga Pradipika says asanas are meant to make the body limber and free of disease. Why? So anyone ever heard this? How did asanas even come about? The yogis learned that I needed to sit in meditation for a long time and my knees would hurt, my back would hurt. And so they devised a system of asanas so that the energies within the bodies would flow freely and not disturb meditation. In fact, in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Swami Yoga Swatmarama writes, he says, Yogi Swatmarama gives out this knowledge of Hatha Yoga only for the attainment of the most excellent Raja Yoga. So he says, I'm teaching you asanas, pranayama, etc. only so you can go to the higher stages. After that pranayama, control the breath. The breath is the link between the mind, body, and soul. If you can control the breath, the mind automatically calms down. And it's a physical tool to use to that point. So this is what I'm getting at. Now are you starting to see the science? Mm-hmm. That this is a science. You unite with God through controlling your mind. First you do that by acting morally and disciplined. Then you control the body and its energies. After that, pratyahara. Pratyahara means withdrawal of the consciousness. So, you cannot learn to meditate. Prior to being able to meditate is the ability to take your consciousness away from where you don't want it. That's pratyahara. And dharana is to focus it where you do. In fact, meditation is defined. This is going to be a tough one. But I am going to put Mimi on the spot, just in case. Because you've talked a lot about the Raja Yoga Sutras. Do you know what Patanjali defines meditation as? That's a tough one.
That is a tough one.
I know. Don't feel bad. I memorized this one.
No, not Siddhasukama. Nitavritti Nirodha, silencing.
No. That's good. No, this one's tough. Meditation is defined as an unbroken flow of consciousness in one direction or toward a single object. So that's what meditation is. So how about this? Nobody's meditating until what you're meditating on is uninterrupted by any thought or feeling or anything else. How many people have reached that state? Anyone? All of us briefly, right? It happens briefly, but then a thought comes, a feeling comes, right? Meditation happens when there's no thoughts or feelings interfering. And you know what happens? Once you're there long enough and it feels like there's nothing happening, boom, an opening happens and you're in another world and you're uniting with the divine. And that's samadhi. And there's stages of samadhi. There's stages of that union. But to get to meditation, so don't feel bad. I remember in meditation class, somebody was like, oh, it would suck because I couldn't control my mind. I was like, don't expect your mind to be still. Expect to practice. And what you're practicing is withdrawal and focusing. Withdrawal and focus. Withdrawal and focus. Withdrawal and focus. That means withdrawing it, especially from your own thoughts. Imagine if you had this power in life. You're thinking something, you're going crazy, you can stop on the dime. Boop, don't want to think that right now. Got something else to do. That's the power of a yogi. To decide how she feels. To decide what she thinks. How do you get there? You practice withdrawal and concentration. That'll lead you into meditation, and meditation will lead you into oneness. That's how Ashtanga yogis unite. Bhakti yogis through devotion. Shravana, hearing about the divine. In fact, Bhagavad Gita, he says a lovely verse. So Bhakti's yoga of devotion. You see, this is very scientific. This is a path of self-control. Bhakti is the path of letting go and devoting yourself to God and loving God. And through loving God and devoting yourself with God, you unite with God. And there's 9 major praise. And the first way to do that is you hear about God. Krishna again, he says, my devotees, or those who are devoted to me, gain great pleasure from always discussing me and enlightening one another about my nature. He says those who are devoted to God gain great pleasure in talking about Him and in enlightening one another about Him. That is Shravanam. Hear about it. Kirtanam, chanting. So everyone knows what kirtan is, right? Hearing divine names and also speaking about God yourself. Smaranam, remembering. Krishna again says this. Like, I study with the Hare Krishna song. And also, once you read enough scripture, they tend to repeat themselves and I just remember verses. He says, you know what the best spiritual practice is? He says, of all? Always think of me. Guess what? That'll get you union. How about this? This is a phrase. You get what you pray to and you become what you meditate on. So he says, if you want to unite with God, remember her. Always. Padasevanam. Padasevanam actually means serving the lotus feet. That comes up a lot. But it means then you serve God. Archanam. Archanam actually means worshiping what you call deity forms, the statues in the temple. But it's just also just means worship. So hear about God, speak about God, remember God, serve God, worship God. Vandanam. Prayer. You pray. You speak to God directly. How many people knew that prayer was a yogic practice? It is. Because yoga means controlling your mind to unite with God. Then these are more advanced prayers. Dasha means going beyond just serving to considering yourself to be an actual servant. That this is where you cross over into my life is yours. Satyam, and then once you're actually this servant, then you become a friend. Right? The president or whoever, he might have a servant with him for 20 years who's helping him out, right-hand man. He or she will know the president personally. They're going to be friends intimately. They're united. And then from there, Atma Nivedanam means total self-surrender. I give myself to you. Through this surrender, you attain this merger. Gyan is the path of wisdom, knowledge. Gyan means understanding the material world, how it works, understanding what spirit is, and using this knowledge and wisdom to navigate through the material world into the spiritual. What are these processes? Viveka, discrimination. Viveka means the ability to decide this is that and that is this. To see what different energies are. To know what the ego and the mind is. To discriminate between them and to choose that which is pure. That's Viveka. Vairagya, detachment. Here's something you have to detach from the material world if you want union with the spiritual world. The truth is they're one, but functionally they're at odds. This is an illusory plane of existence. If we want reality, you have to practice detachment from the illusion. That's not being commonly taught, but it's a foundation of all spiritual practice. All religions will teach that also. Then you have to have these 6 virtues. Oh my God, I might not remember the definitions of 2 of them. Sama means even controlling your mind. Dhamma means controlling your senses. Upadarvati means complete devotion to the path. So these are the 6 virtues, right? Control your mind, control your senses. Decide that this is what you're doing. Right? Krishna says, those on this path are resolute in purpose and their aim is one. The mind of the irresolute is many-branched. It means those who are not determined to become yogins, their mind goes in a lot of different places. But those who are determined to become yogis, they're fixed on that. That's Upadarati. Tatiksha means endurance. It's hard. So you're going to have to work hard. And you have to endure some stuff. Shraddha means faith. You have to have faith in the divine to reach it. And Samadhana means seeing everything equally. Krishna says an enlightened person sees rocks and a gold the same way. He says a person who truly sees his or her equality with all beings, because you see the spiritual essence is one. So you see that we're all equal. Even he sees their equality, whether the other thing you're looking at is a Brahmin, meaning a spiritual teacher, an outcast, a dog, or an elephant. You see this one, it's the samadhan. And the last thing is essential when you really want to get free, mumukshava. It means a burning desire to be free of this material illusion and free from suffering. In the Raja Yoga Sutras, Patanjali says, liberation comes quickly when the desire for it is intense. So if you want it, you get it. And then Karma Yoga is a path of action. Karma means action and reaction. Karma Yoga is devoting all of your actions to the divine. If you want to keep the fruits of your own actions, then you get karma. Right? If you devote the fruits of your actions to the divine, you don't get karma for it, and thus you're eligible for liberation. That's a summary of yoga. Everyone see where asanas are in there. Keep your mind open. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cool. Should we just end with 3 ohms? Thank you.